and
yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final presentation for the GA2020 virtual series. Thank you again to everyone for tuning in. We hope that you have enjoyed our presentation so far, and for anyone that's just happened to pop on for this presentation this evening, welcome. And if you'd like to view any of the previous presentations, they are all available on the Genetics Australia YouTube channel. This evening for our final presentation, we are joined by the one and only CEO of Genetics Australia, Mr. Anthony Shelly. Anthony has been working for Genetics Australia for over 30 years and has been the CEO for the last 5. He's also a board member for DataGene and NHIA, and is an advocate for herd improvement and genetic profitability for Australian genetics. So welcome, Mr. Shelly. Thank you so much for concluding this webinar series for us, and we're looking forward to you presenting on what Genetics Australia will look like in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Claire, and welcome again to all our listeners out there tonight. Yeah, I must say I've been really impressed with our seminar sessions to date. You know, I think we've been really fortunate with the quality of speakers that we've had. But I guess tonight my task is to give you a little bit of an overview of you know, maybe what Genetics Australia is today a little bit, but also in terms of, I guess, some of our key focuses and what they will be as we move towards 2030. 2030 was, I guess, the date or the line in the sand, if you like, that we come up with when we were putting on our original conference plan for back in March. And I'm sure you're all aware that was transitioned across to a virtual series due to some of the COVID situation at that time. So I guess particularly want to thank and acknowledge our previous speakers. You know, as I said, we've had a really great lineup of speakers. You know, started off with John Droppett, and John giving us his insights into what the dairy market looks like into the future, not just here, but he touched a little bit on what the international markets will look like into the future, and maybe what the scope of the Australian industry looks like, particularly Joel Mergler. You know, Joel's I guess got a long history in the genetics industry, particularly with Select Size in the USA, and you know, close affiliate with Worldwide Size, one of our supply partners here into Australia. It was great to sort of get a bit of an insight from Joel into terms of where he sees genetics into the future as well. He was followed up by Juan Marino. You know, a great session from Juan. You know, really gave us an insight into, I guess, the need or the opportunity that sits there with not just genetic but herd improvement, and gave us some insights obviously in terms of the advances that we've made with the sexing and sorting technologies over the period of time. We then had 2 sessions that were pretty much repro focused with Kai Pollner and Sophie Edwards. Yeah, 2 really great sessions, because I mean, it's well and good. I always look at it's well and good to have the genetics and the I guess the hope and trust in what those genetics can do, but it's really important to be able to actually transition that into essentially a calf out the other side, and that comes with good repro performance and so forth. And I think their presentations to us really gave us some, you know, some good guiding tools to be able to utilise in our own operations. And of course, Professor Jenny Price, you know, the principal research scientist here in Australia, that you know, has, I guess, been, you know, really significant in developing a lot of the tools that we use today, particularly in the herd improvement sector. So for me, following up that great group of people's, I must have been a little bit daunting, but it really does tie into, I guess, what we're trying to achieve with the 2030 conference. And you know, I guess I'll summarise that somewhat towards the end of why we've brought all these people together. Firstly, Genetics Australia, our mission. You know, we formed in 1958, and I've used this phrase a little bit in the past, and you know, the ethos of Genetics Australia really hasn't changed. The words in how we describe it may well have, but Our very first chairman, Mr. John Reid, commented that one of the key aspirations was to generate greater prosperity for farming families and their communities through improved herd improvement or greater herd improvement. As you can see by today's mission, the words are somewhat similar. The ethos is very much the same, but that's very much what we strive to do in terms of delivering, a greater improvement, greater prosperity for those family farms, and well, not family just farms, but farming families and the communities that they work in. So I guess it's one thing to have a mission, the next is to sort of put it into action, if you like, and our mission translates to strategy in the following way. We've formulated strategies that we can implement that give us the ability to realise our mission. The key strategies, I'm going to talk to each of these in a little bit more detail, but we have a market strategy, how we want to operate and what we want to attempt to achieve. We have a production strategy, we have an engagement strategy. It's not just about shareholders, it's about all stakeholders, that engagement. A partnership strategy and accelerated breeding strategy is just a few of the topics that I want to spend a little bit of time on tonight. First of all, we'll kick off with the market strategy. Just on 7 years ago, we commenced this strategy, and it was a commitment to divest out of our retail businesses. This was a really direct shift away from retail activity to providing more support to the distributors in the channel, as opposed to fighting it. So what does it mean? It means in basic terms that minimising our farm accounts, providing greater incentives to our distributors via supplier agreements and other activities, actively encouraging farmers to work through distributors that support our products and overall portfolios, and greater investment in field representation. I guess the key factor that of the market strategy, which is very much around our distributors, is really understanding the value that they supply in assisting us to take our products and services to market. And that can't be underestimated, the importance of that. We additionally have a production strategy. Having a domestic production capacity or capability, I guess somewhat a collection facility, requires an annual investment of somewhere in the order of $1.5 to $2 million in operating and capex. And that's an annual, as it says. And so, I guess we've looked at and say, well, very much how can we dilute that level of investment? And that's really the key part of the strategy. So I guess this work's being done through a number of aspects. The first one is working to increase our sales of domestic product into the market. That's a big challenge. When you think about it, and I think John sort of spoke about it in his very first session, we're seeing an overall decline in farm numbers. The opportunity for growth in both cow numbers and even volume of production of particularly around milk is decreasing. So the opportunity is nowhere near as great as what it was. The competition is strong and tough, and good, I should add, which is not necessarily a bad thing for the Australian farmer. We've got another strategy very much around exports, and exports is very much underpinned by Mr. Rob Dirksen. Rob heads up our export division, and I'm pleased to say that it's been, I guess, a real strong shining light of the business over the last few years. We have been in export for many years, but particularly in the last sort of 4 to 5 years, we've, I guess, supplied a great deal of more resource to ensure that we could actually open up more markets and get greater penetration. I guess just to share with you a few of our key markets, we've been working in South Africa, which is a key Jersey market. We've been working in South Africa for well over a decade, and the Australian Jersey is extremely well regarded in South Africa, and we're often surprised at the volumes of semen of individual bulls we've sent there over a number of years. It continues to be a strong market for us. We've commenced doing quite a bit of work into Latin America. Probably not as much as we'd like to do, but again, there's challenges in that region, particularly around currency and language for us particularly. But I guess one of the other big investments that the cooperative made was just over 2 years ago. We invested in a business in New Zealand. It was our distributor at the time, but the key opportunity for us was to really try and create a greater footprint in the New Zealand market. Again, on paper, it does look quite easy. You look at the volume of cows that sit into New Zealand, yet the competition is good and tough, and we've still got quite a bit of work to do to achieve our desired results. The key region for us in the more recent sort of 24 months has been Asia, and particularly around China. There's been a great deal of investment from the cooperative in developing relationships and positioning the Australian product into that market, and we are having some great success. The third dot point there is around our beef. I guess today, I use the word beef portfolio there, but in many ways, I really want to probably expand that a little more, because whilst we've got great support from our supply partners of Select Size in the US and also ST Genetics, we've also developed a really strong domestic portfolio as well. And we've expanded that in recent years with the addition of breeds, or the expansion of breeds, and we are starting to see some really great results. It also dovetails particularly well into our export strategy, because whilst dairy has been the primary focus in opening up a lot of our international markets, the beef component is becoming of greater demand as well, or a strong demand. Increasing of private bulls and collections and exports, and I guess I can link that into the last one as well, which was around distributing competitive product through our supply chain. All of these strategies are very much, or the tactical aspect of them, if you will, is very much around diluting our investment, trying to ensure that, in really basic terms, trying to push as many sausages through the sausage machine as we can, because it obviously creates a dilution of that investment. Our stakeholder engagement, this series of online seminars is a part of that strategy. Other member activities and initiatives include our member newsletters. I'm proud to acknowledge that we've done a much stronger job in that area in the last 12 to 18 months than probably what we had in the couple of years prior. And more recently, we've launched some dedicated member offers. In addition to that, there's a members monthly draw, which has only been up and running the last few months, but really trying to, I guess, engage with our members to create a better value proposition for them. Our stakeholder engagement, though, extends out to our industry partners, of which are wide and many, and I have listed a few there, but key partners such as DataGene, that's so important in the delivery of our breeding value system, NHA from an advocacy point of view. Additionally, a number of our key suppliers, I mentioned both Worldwide Size and ST as supplying beef, but we also have a really long-term relationship with Worldwide Size in terms of supply of our dairy portfolio, along with Jetstream Genetics, very well supported there with Roger Turner, that has done a great job in directing us towards some really great genetics out of his portfolio. And more recently, we've commenced a partnership with Vetiquinol that we had Sophie Edwards as a part of our seminars two weeks back. It doesn't underestimate or devalue the end customers, because ultimately the engagement we strive to have with them is absolutely paramount. And those customers are both our distributor customers and our farmer customers. The need to ensure we remain connected at all levels, from board to management and staff, is a key objective, and one we continue to strive to do a stronger and better job of day to day. The COVID-19 has been an issue implementing some parts of more of our tactical strategy in the last little while, and hence the online seminar that we're a part of tonight. But overall, the stakeholder engagement is a really key part of our strategy. We also have a partnership strategy, and I guess the genetic improvement world is getting smaller, and The major players are getting bigger. They're investing more and more back into their businesses, especially into the aspects of R&D and breeding programs. And I guess the question we've had for ourselves is, in 10 to 20 years' time, will a relatively small AI centre producing 500,000 units of semen per annum still be there? And I personally have a view that it won't. I think there's it's going to have something really unique and special to be able to survive. An option is to find an appropriate partner that provides us with sufficient scale and allows us to leverage off their pre-existing programs, particularly that R&D and breeding. Our business can offer these partners a range of complementary benefits. In particular, production capacity. Australia, as we all know, has got a great green, a clean green reputation. I can't think of the word, reputation, sorry. We've got great market access to many parts of the world, and biosecurity are also great options as well. This strategy is a key objective for the cooperative, and it's identified within our strategic plan as it has been for quite some time. So whilst we're very proud of our history and very proud of the achievements that we have made to date, we're very conscious that alliances and partnership strategies are going to be really key to our future. And that's why we have a really open view in terms of trying to identify what the best path forward is for the cooperative into the future. The next strategy is an accelerated breeding strategy. There are two aspects to this strategy. The first one being a nucleus breeder group. We have agreements in place with most of Australia's leading dairy breeders to give us options to purchase dairy bulls from their breeding herds. Today, over 90% of our dairy bulls are sourced through these nucleus breeders, and they're an integral part of your cooperative. They're integral in terms of ensuring that we can deliver the types of genetics and the types of outcomes that you and our industry is seeking, and we're very pleased and proud of the relationship that we have with this really important group. We have an IVF project. It is currently on hold. It's not on hold because we don't feel there's a place for it. It's on hold for a number of reasons. One of them is we have had limited success. We'll continue to explore ways in getting greater efficiencies from the IVF process. But I guess the IVF project is very much around acceleration. It's around trying to ensure that we reduce that interval as quickly and as effectively as we can, but also directing our genetic gains to those traits that are most sought after for Australian farmers. Last week, as a part of Jenny Price's presentation, she touched on inbreeding, and I guess maybe I'm pinching some of Jenny's words, but I guess we were promised pre-genomics that genomics was potentially a solution for inbreeding. I guess history tells us pretty clearly now, sort of getting towards 10 years on, that it's actually accelerated. I think that's very much Jenny's message. And I guess the key part is that we will require some innovative strategies to tackle how we take this forward into the future. I think one thing we do have to acknowledge that some sacrifices may need to be made in terms of the type of selection or the traits that we select for to ensure that we maintain a level of genetic diversity, or an acceptable level of genetic diversity. This actually leads us into what is that cow of 2030? And in some ways, this was the theme of our original conference. It was really trying to, I guess, identify what that cow is going to look like. I think one thing's very much for sure. The cow of 2030 will be greener than the cow of today. So as we reflect on that and we think, well, how's that going to take place? What's going to drive that? I guess when we look at breeding programs from now through to 2030 and even beyond 2030, we're going to see some significant things take place. And some of these have been picked up in our previous presentations already. Let's just recap on them. Genomic sire usage is going to increase. It has increased year on year globally, and it will continue to do so. A lot of the green traits, I guess, and also the future green traits, will be genomic only. So that's one of the key reasons we will continue to see the increase in genomic sire semen. You know, traits such as heat tolerance and feed save that, you know, are very much genomically focused traits and future traits as well. As a part of this, we'll see proven semen usage decline, clearly as the performance gap between proven and genomics will increase. Sex semen usage. You know, we've heard one there a few weeks back earlier, you know, the technology refinements leading to greater use. You know, if we think back even maybe 4 to 5 years ago of the experience that we had with sex semen and the results we were achieving as opposed to what is available today, we've already seen significant gains. What will the next 5 years look like? What will the next 10 years look like? I'm confident those refinements will continually lead to greater use. Welfare solutions will drive additional usage of sex semen. Increased in tailor-made programs combining the likes of repro history and breeding information are going to again allow farmers to use a higher value product for a more, maybe not certain, but a more predictable outcome. Genomic heifer testing will increase. Mating strategies using genomic information will not just be something that we see the best farmers do or the trendsetters. It will become the norm. Stratifying the herd for mate allocations, using the best bulls. I was using the best of the best bulls, you know, so identifying those best cows and pushing them as hard as we can, and the balance and other cows to beef. Utilisation of genomic or chromosomal mating tools will continue to drive genomic testing, and I guess directly linked to sex semen usage as well. Fixed time AI programs, you know, we are continuing to see increases in herd size, the need for greater efficiencies in reproductive performance, and the value of having those pregnancies today. We will continue to see more fixed time AI programs as we move closer towards 2030. The likes of electronic heat detection and health systems, they're going to increase. I guess my view is very much that I think the health aspect of it is going to become a stronger part of these tools as we look for a greater level of custody of data from, you know, producer to consumer. The ability to be able to collate, measure and utilise health data into the future is going to be something that we're going to see more and more of as we move closer to 2030. Breeding programs in 2030 will see more pole bulls and a greater usage of pole bulls. Dairy beef semen usage will also continue. It's going to continue from two aspects. One about, as I said, the best of the best in terms of the top end of our herd and the balance of our herd to whether it be a high valued beef animal or an F1, but we are going to see dairy beef semen usage increase. We're definitely going to see increased selection of health and welfare traits. I guess somewhat alluding to the green cow from earlier. The community will grant us a social licence with a particular focus on animal welfare, and we will need to demonstrate our commitment to these issues. We can be naive to these facts, but the reality is our social licence is in our hands, and we need to put in place appropriate tools and application of tools to allow us to be granted that social licence. So the echo cow, meeting the conditions of our social licence. we need greater focus on breeding the echo cow. When we look at traits, the likes of available traits now, the likes of feed efficiency, they're traits today that I have a very strong view on. We place far less emphasis on them as an industry. They're going to become more and more important. We heard Jenny talk there last week around the heat tolerance breeding this year that we have. The reality is that that is going to become more and more a tool to be used to ensure that we can demonstrate a part of our social license. Having improvement in trait selection for disease resistance, the likes of mastitis resistance or other sorts of I guess diseases that we can identify, and metabolic sort of things as well. But the low emission aspect, the reduction of our footprint, all of those things will need to have a greater focus on for the cow of the future to ensure that we are granted our social license. We are extremely privileged here in Australia. We're privileged with the, I guess, the researchers that we have. We've been fortunate enough to have some of them a part of our seminars. But the support we have across industry is absolutely mind-blowing, I should say. I think when you look at where the researchers have been able to, I guess, move research into real tools. And I speak particularly at this point around, I think, what we've seen happen in the last 3 to 4 years with BPI. Back prior to that period, we had an Australian evaluation system that was a little ho-hum. Well, at least a little ho-hum in respect of the way it was regarded within our farming community. Today, the BPI is regarded not just within Australia, but outside of Australia as being one of the most sought after and more reliable animal evaluation indices in the world. We've seen our own farmer confidence in terms of farmers now engaging with the likes of BPI, and maybe it is the health weighted indexes as well, to be able to put some focus in their own breeding, have some confidence in the outcomes around greater profitability that are being driven through it. So I just want to, acknowledge the contributors to the Australian dairy industry. They're an extremely important part of what we do at Genetics Australia, and we're also extremely privileged to have really strong relationships with those entities. I guess just before we go to questions, just a little quick summary piece. We've, as Genetics Australia, as I mentioned earlier, we're in our 53rd year. We formed in 1958. We are really proud to be a part of the Australian herd improvement industry. We acknowledge that our model here in Australia has got some vulnerabilities. Happy to acknowledge it, but more than happy to be engaged with industry to assist in finding solutions for our farming members and our farming customers. And we strongly believe that some of those solutions are about, I guess, looking towards the future and identifying more what is going to be required in terms of both the application of breeding and the breeding traits that are going to allow us to be still regarded as that clean, green Australian industry, and one where our partners and our suppliers from around the world want to be a part of as well. So thank you. Claire, that's pretty much the quick short snapshot of Genetics Australia as it is, and as we move towards the green cow of 2030. So yeah, happy to have a few questions fired in if we can.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks so much for that. And like we said, a really good roundup of our previous presentations. So Yeah, hopefully everyone can really understand the importance of our previous presenters and their contribution to Genetics Australia and the model that we have. Anthony, I know that you touched on in your last couple of slides the importance of different Australian dairy industry bodies and their relation to Genetics Australia. Is there areas that you would like to see improvements of, obviously Genetics Australia being the main business and producer and supplier of Australian domestic semen? Is there any other areas that you would like to see, extra support, whether that be in research and development, for example?
Yeah, great question, Claire. And the short answer that there's plenty of opportunity. Then there's I think we never strive forward unless we continue to challenge what we can achieve. And again, I seem to refer back to it a couple of times, but I think about a couple of the aspects that Jenny spoke to last week. We've got a great system. We've got some great tools. We're blessed with exceptional researchers, and the investment that we get through the likes of our not just state but federal governments and Dairy Australia, through to the likes of Allen Bank and AgriBio and Latrobe and all those combined. You couldn't ask for more in terms of the level of support you get in that end. I guess for me, probably the aspect I would probably just touch on is though that it's one thing to have the information, it's one thing to have the tools. The important aspect is around ensuring that the right people have access to them and they know how to utilise them. And probably not answering your question in full, but I guess the last comment I'd just make on it is that the amount of both farmers and industry people that talk to me today about BPI or ABVs in today's world, as opposed to what spoke to me or proactively spoke to me about 5 years ago, didn't exist. So, I think whilst I don't want us to be around patting ourselves on the back thinking we've got the job done, I think the level of engagement today is really significant. And I guess just the final part, I already did say final, but I'll say one more, is I'm personally a really strong advocate of the utilisation of the likes of particularly feed saved and heat tolerance. And I tend to think that the general herd improvement sector may not value those traits as strongly as what I believe they could and maybe will do into the future. And I guess the reason I say that is, but I just feel that, well, feed's pretty straightforward. I mean, feed's expensive. It's only going to become more expensive, but it's also the social aspect of that as well, and the license aspect in terms of we can reduce the amount of carbon and so forth. Well, it actually adds for greater benefits. So.
Anthony, next question. As you know, many international suppliers in Australia are now marketing bulls on BPI, as you've touched on previously. What does that mean to you? And do you think that this index can be used in other international markets?
Yeah, I've got two sides to that, Claire. I mean, from one aspect of it, it's a real pain in the bee, and that's being I guess more so in terms that they compete today with a really strong portfolio, and most of our competitors have got strong portfolios. I guess the real positive I take out of it, and this is more of an overarching view, is that the more and more Australian farmers that use BPI, the greater improvement that our overall industry is going to make in both profitability and performance. So I see that as a really positive thing, to be honest. I think I grabbed all your question, did I?
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of following on from that, we're seeing bulls, more and more bulls kind of hitting over that 400 BPI at the moment. And it seems to be that kind of race to the top. What is your opinion on how far we can go with that BPI number, and should we maybe be looking at other variables as opposed to the top BPI and measuring the top bull in a different way?
Yeah, good question, Claire. I mean, we always have to continue to stretch ourselves, and I think the reality is the actual number to me is probably not that critical as such. And I guess the reason I say that is because there's an MBO review on right at the moment in terms of maybe what some variants of the BPI and other indices look like, and in terms of the level of weighting placed on some traits or not on others, or the inclusion or exclusion of traits potentially will vary the actual BPI quantum anyway. But I think ultimately, when I look at it from a farmer perspective, is that, and I've always had this view, even in previous indices as well, is that always continue to say, right, I'm gonna search the list for the bulls that sit at the top, whether it's the top 20 or the top 50 bulls or whatever, then make your selection on some of those other secondary things you may have a stronger view towards, and whether they be the likes of feed saved or a calving or a calving trait or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think the opportunity for gain is only going to continue in terms of, and I talk gain not in as a number, just in gain in terms of generating more profitable genetics. I think the challenge will be, getting back to the inbreeding slide I put up earlier from, I think the challenge will be around, can we continue to drive right at the pointy end with the breadth of genetics we've got without compromising inbreeding, or do we have to sacrifice some of those, call it maybe direct profit gains, to pick up some of the aspects that only give us a greater social license? So a bit wishy-washy on the answer, but anyway.
Anthony, probably about a year ago, we moved to the solution style catalogue and changed our wording around that. One of the questions is, kind of what was the reasoning behind that movement, and is that still in play with our style of taking the product to market now?
Yeah,
the logic behind that.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Very much still in play, and the logic was pretty straightforward. I mean, I guess as a supply company, that's one of the things we do. We supply products to the market, and for me, I think it was very much around saying, well, hey, yeah, we can produce a catalogue and here's your product, take it or leave it. But at the end of the day, the customers we work with are looking for more, and they're looking to identify how can they solve what they may deem to be issues in their operation. So for me, the solutions base was around trying to, bring together, I guess, solutions for farmers that were somewhat real. So some of those solutions might be, can I be assisted in terms of my reproductive performance? Can I be assisted in terms of the actual breeding strategy around, A2, or whether it be for high milk or whatever it may be. So in some ways, it was really trying to simplify things to a degree for farmers. And again, I would have a view that, hey, if it's A2 and milk, as in milk volume, that I'm searching for as my breeding goal, how would I go about it? For me, I would say, rightio, show me the top 30 bulls, 50 bulls, whichever way you want to go, and let's identify the 2 or 3 bulls, or 4 or 5 bulls probably for me, that fit in there, that give me the higher volumes of milk and are A2 as well. For me, I don't think you have to overcomplicate it, but for me, it was around trying to make the presentation of our portfolio not as daunting. That's what it was about. So.
Thanks. Anthony, just one last question, or statement from to kind of finish things up. What do you see as, some really exciting projects that are currently underway by Genetics Australia, or that, you're working with at the moment? We're obviously living in a high-tech world. Are there any, is there anything kind of that Genetics Australia are looking at the moment that, our farmers and the industry can be really excited about?
Yeah, we should give you a heads up on that question. I've given it a bit more thought, but no, one of the really exciting things we are working on at the moment is really trying to create a more integrated system within business. So this is not something that's necessarily visual, but I think the outcomes will be. So for example, we're in the process of undergoing a bit of an IT upgrade at the moment, and part of that IT upgrade is integrating the technology we have in our laboratory. So we use a semen analysing tool in our laboratory, and having that feeding straight back into our inventory platform. So for us, it will actually allow us to respond quicker to customers in terms of availability and supply, and also forecasting. So it'll give us better tools to be able to, hey, we need bull X collected next week or the week after, and things like that. So that's quite exciting as well. I think one of the other things, though, for me is quite exciting. This is probably more at a customer end of it, is that, the partnerships that we have with the likes of Zoetis in terms of genomic testing, along with the likes of Vetiquinol, that we had Sophie talked with us a couple of weeks ago about being able to offer more than a product. So, for us, it's about utilising the likes of our partners to be able to provide. And it feels back to that sort of solution question you asked a bit earlier, Claire, to be honest, but it's about for us being able to provide more. I mean, I have a view as CEO of Genetics Australia. I think to myself, are we giving our farmers absolutely the best we can? And my clear answer is no. And so for us, that's what continually strives us to try and ensure that, one, we continue to develop our product as best we can. And when I say our product, I'm not talking about just high BPI numbers. Our product is also the actual semen. So we need to ensure that the integrity of our semen is is undisputed, that it's of high quality, and to ensure that we can, ultimately get as many cows and calves as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. And that, I think, wraps up the presentation perfectly. So finally, thank you so much to everyone that has logged on to our presentations over the last 7 weeks. As Anthony mentioned at the start of his presentation, we have been so fortunate to have some amazing presenters come from us from around the world. Certainly note that a few of them had to get up quite early in the morning to join us live. So thank you so much. We've had amazing engagement, and like I said, we've had people tune in from around the world. So super fortunate, and very, very thankful that we've been able to bring this conference to so many people. So in the meantime, everyone, please continue to stay safe. And as I mentioned, we'll have this up on our YouTube channel, so you can tune in and watch all the presentations that we've previously watched. So thank you again, and keep safe, and good evening.
Thank you all. Thank you, Claire.